By the year 2089, mankind had made its way back from near self-extinction. 50 years earlier, the avarice and greed that had become the mantra of the giant corporations led to the unleashing of biological, nuclear, and chemical weapons of mass destruction. The resulting cataclysm, known as the Great Destruction, wiped out 75% of humanity and buried many of the greatest scientific achievements created by man under several feet of ash and clay residue. Somehow, mankind survived. Battle Hunter is a PlayStation 1 simulation RPG where you take on the role as a hunter, one of a select few people in a mangled future that explore underground dungeons and search for treasure against 3 other NPCs or even player-controlled characters. Right off the bat, I have to say this game is just okay. I feel like it has a solid amount of fun things going for it, but the execution was just not very good. There are some fun ideas, a good amount of collectible items with various uses, and even a multiplayer component that could be fun for some. Albeit, I didn't try it since I didn't want to subject any of my friends to a just okay 20-year-old game, and the battle system leaves me wanting, with some of the design choices seeming to be either budgeted out or just plain ignored for whatever reason. I don't think this comes as a surprise when even looking at the back of the game's booklet, however, as the developer A1 Games not only named themselves after a steak sauce, but also seemingly made a handful of games, each one its own game type like shooter, sports, fighting, and board game to name a few. It feels like they were more interested in developing a wide array of games rather than being a studio that excelled at any one genre. The game basically plays like a free-roaming board game with a pool of cards that all players take from. You will be placed on a randomly generated dungeon grid that has 8 boxes placed around it. The goal is to be the first character to find a specific item located in one of these crates and exit the map before another player does. Before you can dive into a game, however, Battle Hunter lets you create a character and allows you to allocate points into 4 categories: movement, attack, defense, and hit points. You can choose from one of 8 predetermined character models and one of 8 color schemes. Now, these character models are actually pretty good looking, and if you are paying close enough attention, you can even play as Sephiroth from Final Fantasy VII, Carmen Sandiego, and even break console exclusivity and play as Master Chief on a PlayStation. Once you have created a hunter, it's time to visit this guy dressed in a blindingly bright Hawaiian shirt who doles out the missions. He will let you know what the target item for the mission is, and if it's a story mission, some banter between him and other NPCs will usually also chip away at the story of a giant corporation seeking loot to somehow bring on yet another apocalyptic event in order for profit and power. During story missions, you need to be the player to finish the level with the indicated item, or it's game over. But during non-story related missions, it doesn't matter if you are the player to return with the desired item or not. So, the only things at risk during these quote-unquote random battles is the amount of loot you can get a hold of or your winning percentage hidden away in the character status menu, if you're into that. At the start of each level, you will be given 5 cards and placed somewhere randomly on the board. The cards can be utilized for a multitude of purposes. Blue cards enhance the character's movement on the board and the probability of escaping when used in battle. Red cards boost the character's attack. Yellow cards help avoid any traps when moving around, and in battle add to the character's defense. Green cards can be used to place traps down on the map to cause damage to other players, stun or immobilize them, or even empty their cache of cards. There is also a deck of extra cards that you will draw from as you use the cards in your possession. As you traverse the dungeon board and attempt to acquire the target item, you can attack or be attacked by any of the 3 other hunters or monsters that lurk in the dungeon. The battle system is where this game takes a turn for the worst, in my opinion. First off, the battles don't net you any experience points or extra benefits other than if you fully deplete your opponent's HP, then you can select one of their items to take as your own. But battles are only 1 turn each, so it takes many battles to whittle down another character's HP when attempting to nab the goods. During this time, you can either run away and or get attacked by other characters and dungeon monsters, making this process arduous. Secondly, the battle damage is calculated at a pace just under warp speed, giving you 0 chance to understand how your character did until the damage numbers pop up. Most people may not really care about this, but since it goes so fast, I had a hard time learning how damage was even calculated. And that left me frustrated for hours until I decided to start learning the damage calculation via a pause screen, a pen, and a piece of paper. Thirdly, all the enemy hunter characters have their stats listed at the bottom right hand corner during battle. But the random dungeon monsters have nothing listed, and there is no way to find out what those stats are in-game. Or at least I couldn't find them. This just exacerbates the battle calculation problem from before even more. I am also convinced that the same monsters have different colors, not only just to give them a little variety, but also to show that some are more powerful, but I refuse to once again break out the pen, the paper, and the pause screen just to prove my suspicions. And my final battle gripe is that NPCs, hunters, and dungeon monsters alike don't seem to have any reasoning behind who they attack and why. Sometimes they seem to just attack whoever is near them, sometimes they go after the hunter with the battle item, sometimes they completely ignore you even if you have the target item, and sometimes I think they just want my character's blood above all else. The battle system is a large part of this game, and I find myself just wishing I could skip it fully, or there was an actual reward for fighting, like experience, instead of some meaningless battle points which barely affects your ranking at the end of the level. My other major gripe with Battle Hunter is that the random dungeon monsters got done dirty by not having any character sprites on the dungeon board. They are all just these generic green pegs that float around. That makes it so if there are multiple of these monsters on the board at once, you cannot easily identify which monster is which, besides Gon, who is an orange floating peg, and it looks dumb, and since hunter characters all have these fun anime-ish sprites, the juxtaposition of green peg and Master Chief feels cheap and neglected. One other thing to mention about the battle system is Gon. Gon is a very powerful monster that only appears once all of the cards have been taken from the deck pool in the upper right hand of the screen. This monster will appear and go directly after the character who possesses the target item, only attacking other hunters if they get too close. Unlike other deaths where you just get your health cut in half and are teleported to a random square in the dungeon, if Gon kills the hunter with the target item, it is game over. This is a fun component that brings a sense of urgency into every level. Gon is much stronger than any other monster, and your dungeon trip has a much better chance of success without seeing this beast on your heels. It is possible to kill Gon. I did do it once. But, once again, there is no extra experience gained and he just respawns at the beginning of the next turn, so you're better off staying away from this dangerous floating orange peg if you can. There are also 100 items that you can collect in the dungeons. These items need to be in your character's inventory at the end of the level and brought to the blindingly bright Hawaiian shirt man who will appraise them for a fee. Some of these items can increase your stats, unlock new backgrounds and music, or just be used to sell to acquire more credits, which are used to level your character up and heal your HP if you had died while in a dungeon. You do only have 6 item spots, which include items you will bring into the dungeon and items that you may pick up while exploring. This adds a little more strategy, as if you want to bring that +2 attack shotgun into the dungeon, then you may not have enough room in your inventory if your next visit to the dungeon is a lucrative one in the item department. Overall, Battle Hunter is a fine game with some obvious cracks in its appearance. I don't think I mentioned this earlier, but it's also pretty dang hard. I think some of that difficulty is driven by some clever design, but mostly by its unintelligible AI decision making and lack of intel into the dungeon monsters. But would I suggest any of you dear viewers flock to eBay to find your very own copy? No. Take this video as a snapshot of a time 20 years ago when a steak sauce developer decided to create a bunch of genre games and enjoy it from afar without the need for you to break out the pen, the paper, or pause screens for yourself.